Taoiseach, on the day after tomorrow, the country is facing an unprecedented withdrawal of labour from rank-and-file Gardaí and indeed higher levels of sergeant and inspectors. This is a very dangerous situation, quite unprecedented, because since the foundation of the state, the Garda Síochána have been the glue that has held our society together through many dark moments, and indeed many Gardaí gave their lives to protect their fellow citizens during the course of their duty. And breaking the law is something that is not intrinsic to them. It's the last thing they would want to do. And in my view, it should not be an option. I think it's dangerous, and the strike should not go ahead, because An Garda Síochána is truly the rock upon which our democracy is built. With that said, Taoiseach, I think the dispute has been allowed to drag on for far too long. The GRA were told that they were not a trade union, and they were promised this, that and the other, but of course they've been left at the back of the queue, and a long queue, for far too long. Rank-and-file Gardaí do feel isolated, they feel demoralised and ignored. Their numbers have been depleted, pay reduced. There are legitimate grievances. And one of the issues that have compounded this is the rudderless nature of the Department of Justice over time, difficulties in filling top positions, and in terms of how government works, not in a position essentially to deal with the issues that have affected the Gardaí over the last number of years, and that we're all very, very, very much aware of. And I would put it to you, Taoiseach, that there are many people out there now quite fearful of what may ensue if the strike goes ahead. Businesses, do they open? Do banks open? Do post offices open? Citizens are fearful in terms of what will transpire as they go about their daily lives. So I think, Taoiseach, the issues have been left on the back burner for far too long. Why did it take so long to get to the Workplace Relations Commission? And in terms of the resolution of this, it's now in the hands of the Labour Court. And it seems to me that it's imperative that the recommendations of the Labour Court are put to ballot, that all members of An Garda Síochána are balloted on the recommendations of the Labour Court. And I would ask you, Taoiseach, if you could indicate if that is your understanding of what may transpire, because it's in nobody's interests, least of all An Garda Síochána, that a strike would take place on Friday. And I think every effort should now be made, notwithstanding the belated nature of what's been going on over the last week. Nonetheless, every opportunity should be taken to ensure that this strike is avoided and prevented, because untold damage, in my view, will be done. And we must all collectively ensure that an institution of the state, which has been central to its foundation and to its emergence from the ashes of the Civil War, right through very dark periods, is held intact, and that the state responds to the situation that is now emerging.
Well, I want to thank Deputy Martin for raising this question. It is of the utmost seriousness for the country, for society, for the Garda Síochána themselves. The motto of the Garda, as everybody is aware, is to work within communities and to protect the public. Now, this is a matter that has taken up a great deal of time, both from the point of view of government and particularly the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, and specifically the Minister for Justice. So I share the deep concern, Lascian Corla, of the members of the House about the implications of a possible industrial action by the GRA and members of the AGSI on this Friday. The Cabinet discussed this in some considerable detail yesterday. It was briefed on the very significant offer that has been made in an attempt to resolve it. And while we are anxious that the matter would be resolved, we've made it perfectly clear that this must be resolved within the constraints and the limits of the Lansdowne Road Agreement. Now, for very many years, Garda Síochána have looked for access to the institutions of the state, or the machinery of the state, in terms of settling disputes and pay and condition matters. Government have accepted that principle, and the WRC has been available, as has been pointed out, on an ad hoc basis until we put in place the statutory issue to allow both itself and the Labour Court be available. Deputy Martin is well aware that the WRC is, if you like, a negotiating board, whereas the Labour Court is a board of arbitration, and it is the highest arbitration facility in the state. I would hope that the GRA and the AGSI, who are both meeting with the Labour Court today, would listen carefully to what the court has to say. It is independent in the way that it does its duty. But I have to point out that it's a normal procedure, as happened in many other cases in the past, that where the Labour Court become involved, and they become involved independently, that they would say on many occasions, take a deep breath here, stand back from this industrial action while we look at the issues that are involved here. And the issues that are involved are access to the WRC and the Labour Court, and questions about pay and the restoration of pay taken away. Now, I don't want to say anything that would in any way disrupt the conversations that are taking place with the Labour Court today. I would say that the meeting that took place yesterday with the Minister for Justice and the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, with both the GRA and the AGSI, were very good meetings. They were constructive, they were positive, and there was a willingness to see that this matter might be resolved. Nobody in this country wants to see a situation where, for the first time ever, the entire Garda force and members of the AGSI would withdraw their services from doing their public duty. I don't want to see that happen, and nobody else wants to see it happen. It is a matter of the most grave seriousness, but there is time for this to be put off. And the Labour Court, in its independence, Alaska and Corla, I hope in the discussions that they have with the GRA and the AGSI, that may, hopefully, might be the outcome.
Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Taoiseach, for his reply, although it seems to me that the labour relations machinery should have been put at the disposal of this dispute far earlier, and also if you can confirm that that would be a permanent arrangement in terms of access to the industrial relations machinery, because the reality is they got left behind at the end of a long queue for far too long, while the government spoke to other unions and did deals with other unions over the last 12 months or so. And that is a factor in relation to this particular dispute. But also I want to raise, Taoiseach, in the context of this dispute and the industrial relations machinery, that the Minister for Public Expenditure has indicated that he is now contemplating bringing forward the completion date of Lansdowne Road Agreement. Now, when the government was formed, the general position was, and we were prepared to confirm our support for Lansdowne in the confidence and supply agreement. But within 6 months, it's very clear now that's beginning to unravel, given the statements of the Minister for Public Expenditure yesterday, and that he'll be bringing forward early restoration. Can you indicate whether the GRA and the AGSI will be included in the talks that the Minister for Public Expenditure has indicated will be brought forward earlier than originally planned in terms of the successor to Lansdowne, and indeed in terms of a shorter duration for Lansdowne than originally envisaged by the government a number of months ago, because I think that is important in terms of certainty and inclusivity that I think could prevent further issues down the line. And if you could indicate the government's general position in relation to Lansdowne, and finally, what are the contingency plans? When can we expect to get the contingency plans if the strike is going ahead on Friday?
I know that Deputy Martin raises this matter out of genuine concern that this industrial action should not take place, and that the public can be sure of the Gardaí doing their duty as they always have done. Would say that that were this to happen on Friday, and I hope it doesn't, Alaska and Corla, there are no winners. Would be no winners out of a situation like this. It's always inevitable that in any industrial dispute nobody gets exactly what they're looking for. The arrangements made on the deal on the table have been published, and these would provide about 3,000 on average to a member of the force over the next 15 months. And that's in addition to the €1,000 that all public servants will receive under the Lansdowne Road Agreement next September. And in addition, the increments restored to Garda and Recruit Garda would receive the rent allowance of over €4,159. Deputy Martin makes an important point here. I recall previously, when you had various arrangements for public pay and conditions being dealt with, the Gardaí always said they were outside the room. They had no input, they had no contribution to make, and they were not treated in that way that they felt they should be. It's an important issue for the Gardaí. The government have accepted the principle of having the machinery of the state available to them, both in respect of WRC and the Labour Court. Now, yesterday at the Cabinet, I asked the Attorney-General and the Minister for Justice to move as quickly as possible on bringing forward the heads of what would be necessary as a legislative measure to give effect to that. And I'm quite sure the House will support us. Professor Horgan's report, which is being examined and which is due to be published by December, will feed into that presentation of the sort of structure of the road ahead as to how that can happen. I'd like to see that it can happen as quickly as possible, but let me assure you that it is the absolute intention of the government that this machinery should be available on a permanent basis to the Gardaí from now on, having been made available on an ad hoc basis. Secondly, Deputy Martin, the Public Pay Commission is underway. This is quite entitled to contract for itself as a matter of work. Specific issues about Garda pay and conditions or nurses' pay and conditions or anything else, that is entirely within their remit. It's well known that we have to have a successor to Lansdowne Road. Normally, as one prepares for the budget in the way the business is being done now, you have the spring statement and you have the National Economic Conference. These normally took place in May or June. The Minister has indicated that he would like to see the commencement of debates and discussions about a successor to Lansdowne sometime before then. I can't give you an exact date, but that's his intention. So, as I say, Deputy Martin, I don't want to say anything now that would in any way disrupt the conversations that are going to happen with the GRA and AGSI and the Labour Court, which is the highest arbitration body in the country. But I do hope, and I make this appeal again, that people on all sides, if it's an independent view of the Labour Court, that Garda should resile from industrial action on Friday, that they would do so and have the court examine in its independence the issues on the table.